You've seen 1 HP runs. You've seen leveling only 1 stat runs. You've seen soul level 1 runs. But now it's time for something you've never seen before. A run that's, to my knowledge, a world's first. A level 0 run. Why hasn't this been done before? Well, I don't think anyone has hated themselves enough to do it. Just so bad at everything I do in life. Just a worse human, overall. Even though a level 0 run and a level 1 run don't sound too different, I can assure you that there are some pretty key differences that led me to approach the run completely differently than I would on a level 1 run. But before we can fully get into that though, if at any point you enjoy my suffering, feel free to like and sub, and comment some ideas for runs you'd like to see in the future. To start off, we picked the warrior class. Just by wearing this starting equipment we're fat rolling. Not only that, because all of our stats are 0, we don't meet any of the stat requirements for our gear. So we can't even properly wield our axe or our shield, so we get rid of all the armor and the shield, and make our way to Gundar. The battle axe does the most damage at level 0 compared to all the other starting weapons. Its R1 damage is pretty rough, but for a weapon that I can't properly wield, it sure does do a good amount of visceral damage. After hitting a couple of clean parries and chunking Gundar down, we get to the second phase. Gundar can't be visceraled in phase 2, so the strat practically becomes death by 1,000 paper cuts. Now we do the tree skip to get an Estus upgrade, and the silver serpent ring. At this point, I added a death counter, because I thought it'd be a good way for you guys to see how much I can struggle at some of these parts. Going through the high wall, grab a raw gem and some titanite shards, so we can do as much damage as possible to Vord as we can. The raw damage gem gets rid of the strength scaling, doesn't get rid of the stat requirements though, so I was pretty much just running on hope that this would actually do anything for me. While the damage output wasn't insane, I'd say 37 for a charge heavy isn't too bad. And for this fight, a charge heavy is all I could do, because the light attacks just bounced off of him and just didn't do much at all. In phase 2, you can charge heavy his face after the 3-part charge attack and follow up with a visceral. But it just couldn't be that simple. You had to be very precise on where you hit his face, because if you hit directly on him, the axe would just bounce off and not stagger him. Eventually, I got it down to the exact spot of where I needed it hit, so all I had to do was just wait until he charged, and then it was pretty much GG's. Now we get to the part where you actually get a usable weapon. Sigurd drops the Storm Ruler, which has 0 stat requirements. I tried to cheese him at first by knocking him down the elevator, but I kinda messed that up, so I just had to be cheesy in a different way and just run R1 him to death. On a quick damage test, we can easily see that Storm Ruler is putting numbers up that are way better than our Battle Axe. The annoying thing about this weapon though, is that it uses Titanite scales to upgrade, so getting it boosted up is going to be a lot more of a hassle than a normal weapon. To get a head start on it, we head back to the start of the game, build the Crystal Lizard to get the scale it drops, and then we upgrade to +1. After this, I wanted to be a little ballsy and give a couple early tries at Dancer, and it went probably as good as you would expect it to. So it's off the Crystal Sage. At this point of the run, I could start to feel how much of a pain in the neck having such low health is, because a lot of attacks would just one-shot me now. Even a single homing mass from Sage is instant death. Although it was weird, because the Crystal Arrow wasn't a one-shot, but you think it would be, considering the homing mass is. Anyways, Sage wasn't too bad, because Storm Ruler actually had a fairly decent damage output on it. Along with that, I guessed right pretty much every time he teleported, so I was doing good damage and just auto-forcing a teleport before the clones could start causing a bunch of problems for me. Heading over to Farron Keep, we cheese these 2 NPCs, and also get invaded by Hazel. We try to cheese him too, but... You're such a dick. Okay. What a little bitch. We go ahead and take out some frustration on the Stray Demon, and then circle back to get Greirat. Because I couldn't level up, I figured I might as well invest in items like Fire Bombs. I was kind of hoping that maybe they could be useful, and it's not like I had a great use for my souls anyway. Spoiler alert, the Fire Bombs were absolutely useless the entire time. Since we were backtracking anyway, I figured I might as well take down Greatwood. It was nothing too exciting, just a typical Greatwood fight, but I will say, Stormruler has a decent sized hitbox on it and an overhead swing, so hitting the back egg was fairly easy to do compared to most weapons, which is pretty nice. Going back to Farron Keep, there's a Crystal Lizard near the bonfire that's by the boss that we have to kill because he drops more Titanite scales. We go ahead and take care of him, get our Stormruler to +2, and then head to Abyss Watchers. Abyss Watchers were so easy. The +2 Stormruler honestly hits so hard. And also, I could finally backstab him, which hasn't been an option for me my last couple of runs. I also got pretty decent RNG on the Friendly Watcher, which made getting Phase 2 super easy. Phase 2 itself was also pretty easy. I just had to wait for him to jump, backstab, and then land a charged heavy while he was standing up. Rinse repeat, and he was good as dead. On the way to Deacons, there's another lizard we killed for its Titanite scales, and then inside the chapel we get Lloyd's Sword Ring. While fighting the Deacons, I realized the Stormruler's durability is kind of ass. During my second attempt, it just straight up broke. So I had to go to Andre, fix the sword, and then I invested in some repair powder. Without having to worry about my weapon breaking now, Deacons went down pretty easy. I expected durability to continue being an issue for the rest of the run, but this is really the only time I ended up actually having to use repair powder for a fight. Volnir was actually low-key a pain in the ass. I don't know if it actually took more hits than usual to break his bracelets, but this time it felt like I had to swing way more times than I usually do to break them. And with the subpar amount of stamina that we have, it's not like we would just spam R1s and be fine. And then of course, there was the fog that is practically a death sentence if you even take a whiff of it. I decided the next course of action would be to head to the Smoldering Lake to get rocked by the old Demon King. I'm usually decent at this fight, but I'm not gonna lie, I got caught pretty hard and for a very long time. Half of my deaths to this guy were either his Fire Vomit or his Fire Hand. Also at this point, I still wasn't fully used to the recovery frames of using a greatsword, so I got caught lacking by that a lot too. And of course, when I finally get him in his weakened state, and just when I'm about to take him down, I snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I somehow forgot that he explodes when he gets to that state, because of course I did. But luckily, for the sake of my sanity, I was able to get him down on the next attempt. After an embarrassing showing at the old demon, I decided to make a change. It was no longer a mistakes made counter. I needed a more positive outlook. So it was now a lessons learned counter. Because each death wasn't a mistake, it was a learning experience, which I grew from, and it taught me to be better. It's too bad I got a fucking learning disability though. After all that, I figured I needed an easy win, and I went to fight Yorm. I get to Yorm, and I still die to him. I don't know what it is, but I always manage to find a way to absolutely throw and die at least once to him per run. I didn't want to fight Pontiff after Yorm, mostly because I wanted to put it off as long as possible because I'm really bad at the fight. So I decided I would go to do Dancer instead. Problem is, I'm not that great at Dancer either. After trying for a while, my mental kind of went in the blender. Just so bad at everything I do in life. Just a worse human, overall. Eventually, I remembered that I completely forgot about something. Because of the way that I had to kill Sigurd, I didn't even think about jumping off the elevator. So I circled back to do that in order to grab Flynn's Ring, which will give us a little more damage, and the Chloranthy Ring, which will help with stamina regen. This really didn't do much for me though, because I just kept dying in the dumbest ways possible. Because of how long the fight was taking, I just kept getting super impatient and would swing even though I clearly knew I couldn't and get hit and die. Eventually, after learning enough lessons, I locked in, started playing more patiently, and finally took Dancer down. If I threw there, automatic uninstall. End the video, delete the footage. Break my controller. That would have been the end of everything. With Dancer finally out of the way, I wanted to give Osiris a couple of shots. And that also ended very badly. So I skipped him for now, and continued on the way to Lothric Castle, where he faced a new obstacle. These dumb-ass dragons. In a normal run, you can just tank the fire and keep rolling through it, but the fire one-shot me, and it was very RNG heavy if I could make it through in time before they spit the fire on the ground. And the RNG was not on my side. My first idea was to see if I could cheese it with a bow. You don't have to fully deplete the dragon's HP to kill it, you just have to hurt its hand enough to trigger the pus of mana on its hand, which you can do by shooting arrows at its hand by standing right here. For some reason, it really wasn't working out for me, so I tried to get it from a different angle. But this was a pain in the ass, and it really didn't show any signs of working, so I figured I'd just take my chances trying to outrun the fire. I knew I was probably going to die repeatedly, but at this point it seemed like less of a hassle than trying to cheese it with a bow. And hey, what do you know? I did it immediately on my first try, so that was a good waste of about 45 minutes. Up these stairs, there's a mimic chest that was full of Titanite scales that I needed, but I just kept on dying, so I finally put my thinky cap on, and I realized that I could probably use armor while running around outside of boss fights to not die as much, and it worked. I could actually tank a single hit thanks to Sequard's armor. So I finally get some more Titanite scales, and then even more from this chest near DSA. After doing a little upgrading to the sword, we head back to Osiris. Alright, look. I'm in level with you. This boss sucks. I'm probably only saying that because I suck at it, because I barely ever fight it, but this boss sucks. Not only that, the boss run itself sucks. It's just so long and tedious, there's so many enemies, and every time you die you gotta spend 35 minutes running back, sitting on the elevator, doing a little more running. I died so much to Osiris that, I'm man enough to admit it when I've been beat, and I got beat bad. For the sake of my last few brain cells, I had to call it quits on Osiris. But, if enough people say something in the comments, I will make a follow-up video where I not only fight Osiris, I will do Champ, Nameless King, and all of the DLC. Moving on, we get to DSA. DSA should have been simple enough, but honestly I was still really butthurt after getting my ass handed to me by Osiris, so I was just playing super sloppy. That wasn't even the biggest problem though. The biggest problem was those stupid ass dragons on both sides of the arena that just start spewing stuff at you in phase 2. When you're one shot by everything, and there are 3 things you have to keep track of, it's super stressful and super agitating when you spend a super long time fighting a boss to get him low, only to die to some random BS from a dragon that you're not actually fighting. Not only that, I'm not sure who did this, but some jackass forgot to hit record on OBS on the attempt where I finally beat him. So I put in all that effort, and I don't even have the footage to show it. Onto Pontiff. Stormruler was doing some pretty good damage to him, but I just kept on dying. After a while, I had the thought of, can Pontiff be parried? And it turns out he could, and I've had no idea this entire time. And it's a good idea I thought of that, because holy shit, look how much damage that does. There are a couple of his moves that can be parried, but some of the timings are a little tricky. And I didn't want to just waste time messing up the timings. So I mostly just stuck to trying to bait out his leaping attack. The same strat works for phase 2 as well. Once the Shadow Clone would leap at me, I would dodge roll through it, parry the real Pontiff, and then iframe through the clone's attacks while I visceral Pontiff. Now it's time for everybody's favorite, Aldrich. Phase 1 is simple enough. As soon as he launches his arrows, you can just run around him, stack damage on the tail for free. Dodging all the other attacks is simple enough as well because they're all pretty slow and easy to dodge. Phase 2 is where it becomes a bit of a hassle. His arrow rain now lasts a lot longer and tracks you very aggressively. However, you can run all the way to the back of the boss room and stand in this little cranny to avoid all the arrows. The downside of this, though, is that he just loves to spam his soul spears and those little orbs like crazy. And when you're stuck in a little corner, it's kind of hard to see what's coming at you, and you really don't have a lot of room to move around and dodge. His melee moves also leave behind a bunch of fire on the ground as well, which just absolutely chunked my health if I just stood in it at all, which would sometimes make it difficult to even attack him. One thing that helps in this fight is that with the correct timing and spacing, you can manipulate him into teleporting to the same spot over and over again. When he teleports, he'll try and go to a corner of the room that is the farthest away from you, but this can be manipulated for a benefit. For instance, right here. He's in the back right corner and starts to teleport. I start to run away so he won't teleport to the corners behind me. After a short pause of being far enough away, the AI chooses the spot that is farthest away at the time, which is the corner he was just in. Then, I run back towards that spot as he is teleporting back in. In my experience, this almost always leads to him using his scythe spin move. And if positioned correctly, you can make him get stuck on the broken pillar, making it easy to avoid the attack and also get some free damage on him. You can rinse and repeat this tactic pretty consistently. It's a bit tedious, I'll admit, but I mean, it's 100% better than having to worry about all those arrows and orbs and At the Grand Archives, we pull this lever, which lets us access the secret chest, which gives us a Titanite slab, so we can fully max out our Stormroller, just in time to deal with the Twin Princes. There were a couple problems with this fight. First off, the boss run is just littered with a lot of various types of enemies, including ones that shoot arrows, which will one-shot me. Usually, if I stuck to the right side of the path, and if I was weaving left and right, I was able to avoid things pretty easily. However, it's still easy to mess up and get hit by a stray attack if I'm not paying attention. Now onto the fight itself. I would constantly struggle to deal with the teleporting moves. The main issue I had was the teleport move that he usually does as soon as you walk through the fog gate. Listen, you can call it cope all you want, but I swear my input was being eaten. I fought this boss a lot, and I really liked the first phase, so I know the dodge windows fairly well, but on my mama, I was hitting the dodge button and it was not coming out. Most of the other times I died in phase 1, I was just panic rolling and getting punished for it. What made the fight fairly easy though, is that the Stormroller did a huge amount of poise damage. If I was able to keep up aggression, it would only take around 6 or so hits to stagger him, and then follow up for a Visceral to do a lot of damage. In phase 2, the orbs were a bit of a problem, as it only took 2 of them to take me out, and this move is being spammed more often than usual. Having to deal with dodging them while also dodging attacks was a bit of a struggle for me. And not only that, I still had my inputs being eaten. I was seriously thinking that I was needing a new controller or something, because I'd be slamming the dodge button and just nothing would happen. Maybe it was all the effects on the screen that was making my computer freak out or something, but I haven't had this problem before or after, so I don't know. But after the 20th time of that happening, I figured screw it. I bought a bunch of arrows, I'm gonna use them. If you end the first phase on a certain point of the stairs, it's possible to glitch the AI. If done right, the boss will spawn with his back to you and will be completely unaware that you're even there. Then you can just pelt the younger brother with the arrows on the back until he dies. Usually a pretty simple tactic, but of course even this was a struggle. On several occasions, I would do the trick properly, but because of the overhead attack of the Stormroller, the sword would hit the boss, start the phase 2 transition, and then as soon as the phase 2 happened, the attack would finish and the sword would slam against the ground, which would make like a very loud noise, which would then make the boss aggro on me and break the glitch. And that wasn't the only problem. When I was finally able to pull off the glitch and start spamming the arrows, this little interaction kept happening. Apparently different arrows had different spots in which you'll go through the younger brother and also hit the older brother to then trigger aggro. This happened about 5 times before I was finally able to find a sweet spot. The arrows didn't do very much damage, obviously, so taking the whole health bar down was a pretty time-consuming task, which made it even more hair-pullingly frustrating when the arrow would mess it up. Now it's time to kick Soul of Cinder's ass. I said, now it's time to kick Soul of Cinder's ass. Okay, yeah, I don't even have an excuse for this. I'm just kind of dog shit at the game. Eventually I got better, and I learned the optimal punishes for the sword and the magic stance. Magic stance was by far the easiest stance of the boss, because it's so easy to dodge and punish literally every single spell he casts. However, the curved sword stance, from what I'm aware of, is literally unpunishable. So as soon as he enters it, you just have to wait the stance out and just wait for him to change stance. Additionally, the staff stance was just the bane of me. I just couldn't dodge the forward stabs of it consistently for the longest time, and I'd say a majority of my deaths came from that stance. This interaction right here happened a few times, and low-key this is some bullshit. The hardest part of Phase 2 was just getting to Phase 2. Even with a fully maxed out Storm Ruler, the damage we were doing wasn't fantastic. But just getting to the second boss phase took a good amount of time. And because it took so long, it made me play impatiently, which made me die more, which made it hurt so much worse to just have to go back and spend so much more time whittling his health down. I only made it to Phase 2 a handful of times, but in the last attempt I locked in. Phase 2 requires a lot of running around and a lot of patience, because there are only a few times where you're actually able to get some damage in. When he casts a Lightning Spear, if you're close enough, his jumping two-handed swing, and his grab. You can technically get a swing or two in when he's charging up in his Lightning Rain, but that was a little too risky for my taste. Phase 2 also ended up taking a while due to a mix of not doing a whole lot of damage and having to wait for him to do the previously mentioned moves. But after a panic-inducing 12 minutes, I was finally able to take him down and complete the world's first level 0 run. Let's go, dude. Dude, my heart. Fucking finally, dude. If it wasn't 6:30 in the morning, I'd be screaming right now. Alright, let's get this run over with.